I'm going to talk a little bit about keeping the eye single and what did Jesus mean by keeping the eye single. And I've alluded to this a little bit, but I haven't gotten into too much detail about it. But keeping the eye single is the understanding that one looks through the eyes, through the physical eyes, but there's a third eye, there's another one that sees. And basically, from my perspective, it's a different kind of seeing. Like, I can see with my physical eyes, but at the same time I see everything at this point as a unified field. So I can be in an extremely altered state, as I was today, as I am every day now, and feel fine. Go about my day, travel, come back from work, see people, do the things that I do, paperwork, all this other stuff, bureaucracy, all that, shenanigans, and do it as if nothing was going on. I was just being my normal self. And Jesus talks about being in the world and not of the world, so that's about as close as I can get to a definition of being in the world, but not of the world. And this is not something that happened overnight. Obviously, I've been at this for lifetimes, but it was definitely in the last year and a half that I've gotten to that place where everything is lit up. So keeping the eye single is really, from that perspective, having a unified field of vision. Like they asked the Buddha as soon as he was enlightened, they asked him if he was a god, and he says, "I'm awake." So the Buddha was all about experiential understanding, and he was a phenomenologist in the end, as I am. So I can't really, I can explain things the best I can, but it's all based on my experience, right? But it's safe to say, based on other things that I will get into, as far as what Jesus said, that he was definitely in connection with this Watcher tradition. So the understanding is being able to bring these energies up the spinal column until they unite, thus the wedding banquet, right? They unite, they have their nuptials in the Holy of Holies. That opens the pineal, and the pineal begins excreting what they call the Christing, what I call the ejaculation, and from there it's a unified vision. Like you can see with your physical eyes, but you also see everything as a unified field. The Buddha said very clearly that nothing is permanent, nothing has a self, and I could see that because everything is a unified field. One thing disappears and becomes something else, and then it becomes something else. It's all a part of this unified field, this thing, this hologram that the Watchers have created in order to reproduce themselves. So keeping the eye single is part of that process. And as Odysseus went 20 years all throughout the Mediterranean till he found his way back home, the prodigal son, I've spent 40 years going all throughout the globe. India, South America, Caribbean, Europe, here in the States. And I found that the kingdom of heaven was within all the time, but I had to do these things. I went out and about. I left the church 40 years ago, and I'm returning with keys to the church, to the congregation, to Christianity, to let Christianity know that they should be aware that they're part of a deeper and much older tradition. And in the subsequent installments, I'll focus on different aspects of that. What unites Christianity to the tradition of the Watchers? And yeah, as far as seeing with the singular eye, I'm kind of used to it at this point. It's taken me a while to get used to that, and I think it's because I was resisting since I was a kid, really, uniting with the hive mind and all that. I was afraid I was going to lose my individuality, and it's one of the reasons why I resisted the great work, so to speak. And I resisted it every step of the way because I was afraid I was going to lose myself in it. And I experienced something 14 years ago that left me in horror. That horror was infinity. When I saw it again in India in 2016, I saw it as something outside of myself, but I did experience it in the form of what they call a darshan, right? The night before I left India, the night after I had that encounter in Mahakal Temple. That was during the Simhasta Kumbh Mela in 2016. It was like 50 million people there, so it was a very intense night. I had sacrament that night amidst all these people. Yeah, was foretold many years prior. That's why I went. But it's only now, in the last year and a half, that I've been able to truly experience it. And that's why I can say that there's 3 degrees, right? The first degree is just indirect knowledge. Second degree is you get the knowledge, but it's not direct. The first degree is where you're just getting it intellectually, right? Things you find in books or whatever. Second degree, you're getting indirect knowledge. It's not coming straight at you. You get it from angles and stuff like that. But in the third degree, in the Holy of Holies, that's when the I becomes singular and you receive the information directly from the Watchers. So now that I've finally given in, so to speak, I've kind of been broken, so to speak, I can see that I'm very much myself and yet very much part of the hive mind of the Watchers. So I can see the way human beings sees, and I can see how they see to the extent that I can because I'm in this equipment. So what I can see from them is limited, but I can see it, right? So it's only now that I feel, I don't know, confident enough to talk about this, because it's hard enough to dumb it down into plain English. But it's something that I've had to go through lifetimes, regurgitating these things to make sure that they make sense, right? Yeah, so keeping the eye single, it's one of different instances of Jesus' sayings that kind of prove that he comes from a much older tradition and that he was just giving a Jewish spin on it. And it also proves that these things were understood, and different things were understood by these people, such as reincarnation and karma, which I will get into in future installments. But this one is critical because without the I being single, you can't really link to the Watchers. It's not possible. It's only when all the energy currents are clean, when you can see things clean and clearly, when you are awake, as the Buddha said. That's the only time that you can truly say that you're keeping your eye single. So I'll get into those instances of karma and reincarnation and subsequent sections, but yeah, I think it's really important that the Christians understand that they're not special snowflakes. They come from something much older, and it would help if they knew the Greek. It's not essential though. I mean, just listen to what Jesus says without the filter necessarily of priests and rabbis and pastors. And so this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring you the keys, so to speak, without the filters. I mean, that's why I left, to go find these keys without the filters, right? Without all the layers and layers of reinterpretations and translations and spins and all this other stuff that has left Christianity quite bereft of its own fire, of its own inner heat, of its own essence. So, this is part of why I think the watchers are urging me to do this, amongst many other things. So, yeah, we'll continue down this rabbit hole, and till next time.